Hello. Today I want to talk about the lunar month for countries and people, part two, covering from July 5th through August 4th. So let's see if I can share my screen and we can get started. Just give me a second here. I have to get rid of some panels so I can see what I'm doing. So we're just about there. Okay, I think we're ready to start. So this is the lunar month for countries and people, part two. Putin, Russia, Ukraine, King Charles, Kate Middleton, United Kingdom, and Pope Francis, July 5th through August 4th. And we'll start with Putin, and he has a lot of the same stuff going on. It looks like he's going to have some difficulties, but also some good things happening that will probably help keep him in power for now. Transiting, transiting Chiron is opposite his natal Mercury. So, Chiron is going through a sixth house of health. He may be having some health issues, some cognitive issues, but this represents probably some wounding of one sort or another. And transiting Saturn is sesquiquadrate, his natal ascendant. So, again, he's experiencing frustrations on a lot of fronts. However, transiting Chiron is also trine his Pluto, and Pluto rules his first house, so this is going to bring some healing to him. And since Pluto is in his 10th house, he is probably going to retain his power and position for now. Also, transiting Saturn is making a sextile to natal Jupiter and a trine to natal Uranus. So this is going to help sustain him for right now. Saturn sextile Jupiter is good because that's a represents good coordination between growth and regulation, discipline. So for now, I think Putin is probably safe. He's going to have some difficulties. There might be some ongoing health difficulties and ongoing frustrations in his life. But he has some lifelines that are being thrown to him. And so I think he will endure for the moment. Now, if we look to see uh, how long each of these transits will last, well, we see the most stuff lasting for the entire lunar month. Transiting Chiron opposite natal Mercury, that is particularly strong, and it's going to be an exact opposition in the next lunar month on August 24th. Transiting Saturn, sesquiquadrate, the ascendant, that's not going to be present right at the start of the lunar month, but by mid-July it kicks in. It's stronger and stronger, and it's going to be exact on August 8th. Now, these good transits, which are the lifelines being thrown to him, they're going to last quite a while. Transiting Chiron trine Pluto, that lasts the entire lunar month. And as soon as transiting Saturn sextile Jupiter fades out, well, transiting Saturn trine Uranus, it's already will have kicked in. That's going to last the entire lunar month and be exact uh, basically at the on the day of the next new moon, which will be August 4th. Now, if we look at Russia, they're continuing to have some problems. Transiting Pluto is opposite the natal ascendant, and this represents some oppression, not only from other countries, with, of course, sanctions and whatnot, but also from Putin himself. Transiting Saturn, square natal Mars, and semi-square natal Saturn, that's causing a lot of frustration and anger, probably amongst the people in Russia, and perhaps directed toward other countries too by Russia's leadership. But nonetheless, transiting Pluto, making a sextile to the natal midheaven, that will help reinforce Putin's power and control on things, most likely. These are all probabilities. It's just a weather report. People can make decisions on their own, so virtually anything could happen. So nothing is a certainty, but the chances are that Putin is safe for now, in spite of the frustrations that the country is experiencing. And here we can see how long each of these transits will last and when they'll be exact. And Pluto opposite the ascendant, that's going to last the entire lunar month, as will Saturn square Mars. The semi-square of Saturn to natal Saturn, that lasts through about mid-July. And let's see, uh, Pluto sextile, the midheaven, that's going to last the entire lunar month also. Okay, and now if we take a look at Ukraine, transiting Pluto is still conjunct natal Saturn over here, but it's waning. And remember, there's going to be this 3-year period where this opposition from between Saturn and Chiron will be activated, but it's not going to be activated continuously throughout. It can sometimes be off and on. And right now, the effect of Pluto on that opposition is waning. So Ukraine is getting a little bit of a reprieve, and that's what we've seen. Military supplies and goods from the United States and other countries are flowing again at the moment. Now, transiting Uranus is making a square to natal Jupiter and Mercury, and that can cause some disruptions once again in the supply chain and on uh, the luck of Uranus and their capacity for growth. So their luck is being impaired a little bit. There are going to continue to be unexpected setbacks, most likely, changes in how things are going on. And transiting Saturn, making a sesquiquadrate to natal Chiron, that is going to cause some wounding and some hardship. However, transiting Saturn is trying natal Pluto, so the country will probably endure in spite of the difficulties. They will endure for the moment, and Pluto is in the 10th house, so this also represents the leadership in Ukraine and Zelensky, I believe, in particular. So, again, times continue to be tough for Ukraine, but I think they are going to endure for this upcoming lunar month. And here we can see when things are going to be most active. And unfortunately, right after the lunar month begins on July 5th, that's going to be about over here. Shortly thereafter, there's this period throughout most of July in which it's going to be mainly hard aspects. And this good aspect of Saturn trine Pluto, that doesn't kick in until almost the end of July. It becomes exact on August 15th. So, times it appears will be the toughest for Ukraine uh, throughout much of July, from shortly after the beginning of the lunar month until almost at the end of the calendar month. So I just hope they can hold on until then. Once we get into August, things look better for leadership and for Zelensky. Now, if we take a look at transits for King Charles, it's nothing but hard transits this month. Using just a 1-degree orb here, we have transiting Pluto, square natal moon, and that can be very ominous. The moon has to do with the person's body and physical health. Pluto is death and transformation, trauma of one sort or another. It can represent the Cancer. So this could be a tough month for King Charles. Of course, as usual, I have set my outer wheel here to the time of the full moon, which is going to be the midpoint for the lunar month. So we can pretty much see how the transits are on either side at this point. Okay, so this transiting Pluto square natal moon, that looks tough. And he continues, as he will for the rest of the summer, to have transiting Neptune making a square to this Uranus-Jupiter opposition. This could cause some weakness in his abilities to work with others and for his health. It could cause some confusion or maybe nausea from chemotherapy. We can't say exactly what without knowing more about his situation, but there's seems to be some kind of weakness here on some level. And here you can see when each of these aspects will be exact. Uh, Everything is lasting pretty much the entire lunar month. And notice that transiting Pluto's square natal moon, that is going to be exact on August 11th. And I have some particular concern about that day because if I look at his midpoints over the next couple of months, July and August, one day after, on August 12th, Chiron is making a square to his Moon Venus midpoint. So Chiron could manifest as wounding. And with the midpoint between Moon and Venus, this could be something very personal that affects his health. So August 11th, August 12th, or thereabouts, those are dates to keep an eye on with regard to the status of King Charles. Now, the good news is, as I always say, this is just a cosmic weather report, and the weather report is only half the picture. The other half are the decisions that individual people make. Of course, as king in Great Britain, king of the United Kingdom, he has access to the best doctors and the best medical care available. So that could make a big difference into how King Charles fares in this lunar month. And August 12th, that's actually going to be in the next lunar month. So nonetheless, we'll see what happens. Okay, now if we take a look at Kate Middleton, her prospects are looking better. She continues to have transiting Uranus making a sesquiquadrant to natal Mars. That could cause some reversals in her body, her physical problems, her energy level. And she has already talked about how with her chemotherapy, she has good days, she has bad days. She has days when her energy level is very good and days when it isn't. Transiting Saturn is making a semi-square to natal midheaven, so I doubt that she is really ready to resume her full set of duties as a member of the royal family. She still has to curtail her appearances at various events here and there. However, she also has some very good aspects. Transiting Saturn is making let's see, a sextile to her natal sun, a trine to natal moon, and another sextile to natal Chiron. So this is really going to help sustain her, strengthen her, and heal her. And if we look at this graph of when the various transits are going to be in effect, we see that once we get past about mid-July, a little bit past it, it's going to be mainly good aspects in effect. So I think once we get past this midpoint in July, she's going to start feeling a lot better and regaining a lot of her health and energy. Now, if we look at the United Kingdom, as predicted, they have been having some political problems, and there might be changes in leadership in the United Kingdom. Transiting Pluto is opposite Jupiter, which is in the 10th house. Up here, the 10th house has to do with the country's rulers. That could be the royals, the royal rulers, or it could be the prime minister. And the 4th house represents more the people. And there is a possibility, as has been speculated in the papers, that there may be a change in leadership in the United Kingdom. There will be perhaps some sort of shakeup or change in prime minister. Transiting Uranus is making a sesquiquadrant to the sun. The sun also represents the ruler. Again, that could be the king or it could be the prime minister or other people with power. Either way, this suggests there are going to be some changes coming up. And transiting Saturn is square natal Mercury. That could cause some difficulties for trade and the economy. So there are some problems in the United Kingdom, but there's a lot of good aspects going on too, which will provide some lifelines. Transiting Chiron, trine, natal Saturn, that is going to bring healing to the country in the long term, not necessarily the short term, but in the long term. Transiting Pluto, uh, let's see, trine Uranus, that will help the country out. And Uranus is not that far away from the cusp of the 1st house. So I think despite difficulties, the country is still quite strong. And let's see, we also have transiting Saturn is going to be making a trine to natal moon and natal Neptune. Now, actually, what it's going to be doing, it's sort of completing a grand trine here involving 2 natal planets and transiting Saturn. And that is going to be quite good in the long run and help sustain things. Since the moon is in the 10th house, that is good for leadership. So we have 2 indications here. The beneficial aspects from Saturn can help sustain leadership. The opposition from Pluto can result in a change in leadership. Since the moon also represents the people, well, this trine from Saturn is going to be good for the people too. So, how will things work out? Will there actually be a change in prime minister? Or will it be a change in the royal family? We don't know for sure. We have indications pulling in opposite directions. We just have to wait and see which one turns out to be strongest. Now, if we look at these graphs here, we see that the good aspects tend to be a little bit stronger than the bad aspects. And this Pluto in opposition to Jupiter, which is in the 10th house, that is going to pretty much have gone away by the time we get to the last week of July. So, if the prime minister or others can hold on to them, then they may be in the clear. And the Saturn square Mercury, which could affect trade and the economy, that kicks in around the beginning of August, is exact on August 18th, which will be in the next lunar month. So, the good will tend to outweigh the bad for the United Kingdom in this particular month. And as for political changes, well, there are rumblings, but for the rest, we just have to wait and see. Okay, now for Pope Francis, things are not looking good at all. It looks like another tough month for the Pope. Transiting Pluto is going to be semi-square, natal Saturn, and square the midheaven. This is pressure which could cause a change in leadership. Uh, Something could happen, things could happen, which could cause Francis to have to give up being Pope, possibly. Now, the good news is he did have some bad aspects in the previous lunar month, but he seems to have weathered those okay. So possibly he will weather these also. Transiting Uranus over here is going to be semi-square, the natal ascendant, and that suggests changes in his personal life, sudden changes. And transiting Uranus is going to be sesquiquadrant, natal Mercury. Over here, that could be changes in his relationship with others, or since Mercury rules his 12th house, it could be some sudden long term illness or condition that he has to deal with. Now, the aspect that I find most interesting here is transiting Saturn is opposite his natal Neptune, and it's a square his natal Chiron. Now, in his natal chart, where I use larger orbs, Chiron is in opposition to a sun, and I've talked about that elsewhere. With that Sun Chiron opposition in his birth chart, this is something where Chiron, it urges us to transcend the visible world, to move toward the invisible world, the spirit world, larger realities. But before that can happen, quite often our hard shells have to first be cracked, and that's where the wounding from Chiron comes in. Now, when Pope Francis was a young man in his early 20s, he worked as a chemist. But transiting Saturn came into conjunction with his natal Sun and in opposition to his natal Chiron, it activated this opposition in his chart. And he had a very severe case of pneumonia, which lasted for quite a while. And almost all of one lung had to be removed. This was a very serious and very long lasting case of pneumonia. And after that, Francis joined the Jesuits and then later became a priest. So he's the classic example of the wounded healer who goes on to become the shaman. This health crisis helped him integrate these higher energies, these more spiritual energies with himself. And he went on to become a very holy person, if you will, and of course the Pope. And as I say, even though I don't agree with all of his politics, I don't agree with all of the positions of the Catholic Church, but nonetheless, when I look at Pope Francis, I see a person who has love in his heart for other people. He is filled with this higher light of love and joy. And this was all precipitated by a health crisis. And of course, we can note that the sun is in his sixth house, which has to do with health. Well, with transiting Saturn now, it's in opposition to Neptune, squaring Chiron. And as I said, the sun over here is probably going to be drawn into this, even though I usually just use 1 degree orbs for these transits. So this is repeating the kind of health crisis that he went through as a young man, possibly. So he could once again have some sort of infection that would also be Neptune. which is involved with this. And he could have health problems that cause sudden changes in his life and force him to retire from being Pope. Now, that's a possibility. That's a heightened possibility for this lunar month. That doesn't mean this is going to happen. Granted, he is quite elderly at this point, but he also has access to great health care, and he may be able to continue to ride it out. But the pressure is there, and we just have to wait and see what happens. And here we can see when each of these aspects will be in effect. And let's see. Saturn square Chiron, that is on the way out, but Saturn opposition to Neptune, that is going to become strongest on July 23rd. This may be a time when he experiences some kind of fever or infection. And Uranus sesquiquadrate Mercury, that will be strongest on the 30th. Pluto square midheaven, that starts to gain influence in mid-July and becomes exact in the next lunar month on August 28th. So these give you an idea of dates to keep an eye on and see what goes on with the pontiff around these particular times. Okay, that is going to be it for this presentation. So let's see if I can stop sharing my screen here. Okay, and I'm back. So that's it for the lunar month for countries and people, part 2 from July 5th through August 4th. I hope you have enjoyed that. I hope you watch my other videos. And a lot of times I'm pretty accurate. Sometimes I miss the boat a little bit, as I did with, for instance, the recent debate involving Trump and Biden. I noticed that Biden had some contradictory transits there. He had Mercury, transiting Mercury, trying his natal Mercury, which suggested that he might speak well, but he also had transiting Sun, sesquiquadrate natal Mercury, which suggested he may have some difficulty speaking, and in particular, since he's been a lifelong stutterer, there was a possibility that that disability would kick in. Well, ahead of the debate, I thought President Biden would probably be able to manage okay and uh, end up maybe having a few gasps, but end up speaking well. It turned out he had more difficulty than I thought. Everything was still kind of in line with the possibilities, but the balance between them was not quite what I thought they would be. Well, that happens. We can't accurately predict everything. As I say, it's a weather report, and it's just like when the weatherman says that a hurricane will likely cause only a 5-foot storm surge, but you get a 10-foot storm surge instead. These are just things that happen. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you join me again for more videos. So for now, I'll just say so long and be well.